Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you. This is KRWG, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Next on Newsmakers, efforts to help a mom in Mexico visit her sick child receiving care in the United States. In Focus, we continue our post-election conversation with Cafe's Sarah Silva, and later a tribe from Mexico visits a Las Cruces charter school. Thanks for joining us on Newsmakers. I'm Fred Martino. Humanitarian parole allows barred immigrants to temporarily enter the U.S. in dire circumstances, like extreme family or medical issues. But the federal government says only about 25% of these applications are approved each year. As Simon Thompson reports, U.S. immigration enforcement can leave sick and suffering Americans separated from their non-citizen family and caregivers.
Rosa Mani's 12-year-old daughter, Emily, was diagnosed with systematic juvenile onset arthritis, an intense condition that causes her immune system to attack her joints and internal organs. Her condition is compounded by severe depression, epilepsy, osteoporosis, and scoliosis. She is currently receiving treatment in Chicago. Despite her daughter's suffering and need, her mother Rosa can't be there with her. Past illegal entries into the US led Customs and Immigration to bar Rosa from getting a visa or entering the country. Stuck in Mexico, she hasn't been able to see her daughter for 2 years. In a video plea, Manny said, "A little girl, she doesn't know why her mum isn't with her. They're to take her to the hospital, to see her grow, to give her medication, or to simply be able to hug her in the midst of her pain."
How do we get a mother and a daughter who's deathly ill together that have not seen each other for 2 years?
Roberto Reed is the lead pastor at Sonoma Springs Covenant Church in Las Cruces. He, his church, and a coalition of immigration advocates are petitioning on behalf of Rosa Mani with U.S. immigration.
Emily, Rosa's daughter, has special needs related to her sickness. And so my heart just goes out, as a father, goes out to a mother that can't be with her daughter. I can't imagine what that would be like.
Rosa's daughter, Emily, wasn't moved to the US by choice. She was moved to get biological treatment. Pastor Reed says the family did try to stay in Mexico where they had a good life, but they couldn't get access to the care Emily needed.
Good jobs, real estate, house, car. Then the daughter was diagnosed, went through healthcare in Mexico, exhausted all the possibilities there, depleted all of their resources, couldn't pay $4,000 a month. And so thus went to the U.S. Embassy to ask for a humanitarian visa for their daughter that was a U.S. citizen. It was denied. So what do? Right? So they sent the daughter across, and the father's there with them as well now. But the mother, after another attempt legally to cross, then was denied entry, and so out of desperation crossed and was detained and was in detention facility prison.
Manny's lawyer, Jessica Miles, says it was denied without good reason or even a fair review.
What the internal guidance says is that they have to review every case on a case-by-case basis, but they have to give every case a meaningful review. And in this case, they just haven't done that. They've really been giving Rosa and her family the runaround from the very beginning.
U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services do have a humanitarian parole policy for extreme cases, such as dire medical conditions. But Pastor Roberto Reed says he witnessed Rosa being denied that parole.
Went to the Santa Fe Bridge, had like 160 plus pages of documents and reasons, medical records and such. They met with her. Of the 3 hours that she was held alone, 3 minutes perhaps. And later, when talked to one of the directors, one of the chiefs, he said, "Yeah, I reviewed the case." And I said, "Do you know what the daughter's illness is? If you reviewed the case for humanitarian parole." And he said, "Yeah, I think it's leukemia." I said, "No, it's not." And so, seemingly, they did not look at the humanitarian reasons, but it's humanitarian parole.
So a coalition of immigration advocates, including Roberto Reed, recently showed up at U.S. immigration offices in El Paso. Their hope is to push Director of Field Operations Hector Mancha to positively review Rosa Mani's case.
So this is the letter that we're going to deliver to the Director Hector Mancha, and we're asking for him to grant humanitarian parole to Rosa so she can come into the United States and be united with her family, with her sick daughter that she hasn't seen in 2 years.
That petition already has close to 600 signatures. Reed says Mani's case touched him, his church, and the broader community on a religious and human level. And that's why they became involved.
There's a moral issue, which I think is black and white. There's a power issue, so CBP has the power. Hector Mancha right now has the discretionary power to make things right.
Reed says he hopes continued dialogue and support from members of the community will push U.S. immigration to positively re-evaluate Rosa's case. He says holding immigration accountable and pushing for change could help countless others.
Rosa is one woman of millions, and her case, I think, represents a system that is broken, that doesn't look at the human side. So there needs to be a pathway and a process, but there needs to be humanity in how we deport.
Rosa Mani is not alone. Federal statistics say only 25% of humanitarian parole applications are approved each year. For KRWG, I'm Simon Thompson.
While immigrants across the nation face discrimination and difficulty, our community is known for celebrating the importance of immigrants in building our nation. And a program at New Mexico State University helps the children of migrant workers. The College Assistance Migrant Program, better known as CAMP, recently held its 9th annual Poster Expo. As Samantha Sonner reports, the expo highlights the student experience in research, study abroad, and internships.
Sophomore Joaquin Chavarria showed off research he did during a summer internship and talked about his experience in the CAMP program. He says the program was instrumental in helping him complete his first year successfully.
And the experience for me was actually great because we get tutors at the program when needed, and the workers there and the staff there pretty want to see your progress and success in college.
Freshman Itzel Sarah Silva says having a support system like CAMP helped her start college on the right foot.
Since the year started, every time I've needed help, they've been there for me. We have the tutoring sessions, and they're really helpful because sometimes you don't know who to go to, or you don't know who other tutors are, and you just get a lot of help with anything. Even if it's personal problems, they'll lead you to the right person.
Sarah Gallegos, retention advisor for the NMSU CAMP program, says by providing a comfortable place for new students to go, it makes adjusting to college easier.
When you're intimidated, they're already intimidated coming in as a minority. So to feel comfortable in a place and want to come back, I think that's important for retention and be able to get the help that you need.
Joaquin Chavarria says having other students who have gone through the same things makes it easy to get advice when you need it.
I've always talked to them which class should I take, and they always kind of take me to the steps of being successful. They actually told me where they recommended me to go. If I'm struggling in math, go to the math center and just focus in school and stay in school. And even though it might get hard at times, just stick with it, because at the end it's going to pay off.
Itzel Saracero says being part of the CAMP program is like having a second family to talk to.
Everybody has experienced a lot of things that are similar, like what I've experienced, a lot of people in CAMP also have. So we do see a connection, and everybody does get along because they understand what you've been through. And I think that's really important because it is like a second family.
For KRWG, I'm Samantha Sonner.
Time now for our weekly feature on the issues that shape our community, In Focus.
Hi, I'm Anthony Moreno. Thank you for joining us for In Focus. We continue our conversation this week with Sarah Silva, Executive Director of New Mexico Cafe. Sarah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Now, as we continue our conversation about the recent incidents of hate that have been reported by the Southern Poverty Law Center. In a recent report, they stated that nearly 900 incidents of hate have been reported to them, and out of those nearly 900, 23% have been against the African American community. I'm curious, what you're hearing with your organization. You work with various communities. I mean, what are some of the things that you've heard so far?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concern amongst our small but vocal African American community, our Muslim community, and then our Latino and immigrant community. So New Mexico is one of 5 states that has a majority people of color. So this isn't anything new for us. We know how to live and work with one another for the most part in a multicultural community like New Mexico. But what we have heard is that there are still instances of school children in particular saying you're going to have to leave now, or racial slurs thrown at children, and then our Muslim community being targeted in particular. And these are one-on-one interpersonal relationships, like at the store, the grocery store, in traffic. This isn't anything like big or like structural happening at churches or schools, but it's there.
The report stated that. That's one of the things that is kind of alarming to someone, I would suspect, is that these are happening in public places. These are happening in workplaces, retail places,
right.
Schools, K through 12, and even on college campuses.
Yeah.
It's one thing that I'm wondering, are working with these different communities, are you reaching out to like the public places or business owners or schools or anything like that?
Yeah. We are calling on our public institutions and our government institutions to publicly put on record their stance that we will continue to protect and respect one another, regardless of race, religion, or creed. And I mean, those are the values that our country, that we aspire to. And I think as a person, I'm a person of color, I'm a woman, but I'm also U.S. born. I speak English well, and I have a responsibility to stand up for my brothers and sisters that may be targeted for that kind of discrimination and hate. And I think we all do. So those of us who are in positions of privilege, I think we have a right and a responsibility to protect our brothers and sisters here.
I'd like to also talk about how women have been impacted, not only during the presidential campaign, where, of course, the president-elect's statements that he made over 10 years ago on video about bragging about sexual assault towards women. How has that impacted, the community around, and you yourself? How do you view that as?
Yeah, I think that's a really personal one, and it's because, one, he did something illegal. What he did was brag about something that is against the law, to sexually assault someone, and the fact that didn't really pose a threat to his election was scary. That's the best way I can describe it. There's no political correctness there. It was scary for me as a woman to hear that, and someone who's experienced sexual assault and harassment. And again, those of us that are in privileged positions, in particular men, I know not all men do this, but every woman has experienced sexual assault and harassment. And so the good men out there have to speak up, not only on behalf of their own gender, but on behalf of women, and respect us as humans as well. We're experiencing that, recently our former county treasurer was removed for making sexual advances on an employee. And he said it was, quote, to lift her spirits. And so we have that happening locally here. It's not just all the way up at the presidency, it happens here as well.
What does that say to folks when this can happen in a presidential campaign, you know, running for the highest office in the land, the free world, when somebody can make those statements and still capture the presidency, how does that really make waves on other political offices across the country?
I mean, it tells us what's allowed and what's not allowed, and what kind of behavior we will tolerate. And I think the thing that we have to be very cautious of is making sure that our rights as citizens and people living in the U.S. are protected, that I or anyone else going about our business and living our lives can do it in a safe and healthy way, and that I can raise my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, in a safe and healthy way as well. Those things are important to any community that you would ask in this country. And I think it's also our responsibility to protect it regardless of who our president is.
You know, as a parent, what do you say to your child when, you know, things like this are broadcasted over television? Obviously, people are talking about it in public and in schools. I mean, how do you deal with that? And then I'm just curious, like how do parents react when statements like this are being made?
You know, I asked my daughter how she feels about some of the comments. She's asked me, you know, does he really think that way about girls? Is he the only one that thinks that way? And so she and I have had conversations that I think I would have chosen to have later with her when she was older. So she's had to grow up a lot this last year. And I've had to censor a lot of what she hears on the radio and on TV. That's also my job, to protect her from and keep as much of her innocence as I possibly can as a mom.
You also obviously work with different faiths, and the report lists, 12% of reported acts have been listed as anti-Semitic, and 6% against the Muslim communities. What is the faith community doing locally here in Las Cruces, Doña Ana County to really, work with each other in case there are hate incidents put forth against them?
Yeah, what we've been doing is we've been having interfaith dialogues so that people can see and hear what the other is experiencing and that we can humanize each other. But the other thing too is that there are people of goodwill in Catholic and evangelical churches that need to now speak up against hate and bigotry that they're hearing and seeing. And that if people that are neutral in moments of injustice side with the injustice. And now is a time more than ever that we can speak up and speak towards mercy and compassion. I think the other thing is that if you are a Trump supporter, that is fine. Like, I am perfectly okay with someone voting and blowing up the system because the system wasn't working for a lot of us in the first place. What's not acceptable is the racial anxiety and the bigotry that came along with it.
The president-elect, Donald Trump, has, in November stated in interviews with 60 Minutes and the New York Times that, he was, quote, surprised to hear these comments and said, wanted people to, stop it. What else do you want to see from your president when incidents like this are happening?
Yeah, I want to see it from everybody. I want to see people calling out racial anxiety and bigotry. When there is multiculturalism or diversity in the community, there will always be racial anxiety. Always. That never goes away. The difference is that we can either bridge that anxiety or we can exacerbate it. And 3 things are dependent on it: leadership, narratives, the stories we tell about each other, and institutions. And if those 3 things are working towards bridging those differences, then we can get to a place where we can actually start solving some of our problems. But right now, we're continuing to divide and exacerbate that anxiety.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank you, Sarah, for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us for In Focus. I'm Anthony Moreno.
Education news now, and we visit a Las Cruces charter school. Earlier this year, a tribe from the Copper Canyon in Mexico visited the school to share their culture. Samantha Sonner reports.
Students sung and danced to welcome members of the Tarahumara tribe to La Academia Dolores Huerta. Principal Octavio Casillas says it's important for students to learn about different indigenous cultures.
Because there's a lot that we can learn from them, and I believe some of the reasons that kids lose their place in life is because they forget who their ancestors were and who they are supposed to honor.
Casillas says there are also lessons to be learned from their lifestyle. They are almost exclusively vegetarians and eat only what they are able to grow.
The Tarahumaras, what's special about them is they have been able to maintain their culture, and their lifestyle it's beautiful. You know, they have like no diabetes, no high blood pressure, they don't have any cancer, and they're vegetarians, they live a very healthy life, they're highly mobile.
Irma Chavez Cruz spoke with students about her culture and about how living a healthy lifestyle is out of respect for nature.
I believe we can adapt because in that way the importance of nature can be respected and appreciated, because without it we would not have what we have.
Running also holds spiritual significance for the Tarahumara tribe. As part of their beliefs, they think that running helps make the world go around, and they run out of respect for God.
Because it is the way that we show appreciation. It is the thanks that is given to nature, because in it we are part of everything, and everything is part of nature. We live in it. We breathe it. There is water we drink from, where we eat from. We have to be thankful because it gives us everything and gives us that soul that we should follow walking.
Chavez Cruz hopes students can take something away from the visit.
We are just one world. We all deserve respect. We all deserve to be treated with dignity. So together we're able to achieve something from our heart to make a change for all the things happening in the world, the violence. And so I would like for them to walk with us in the spirit, with nature, respecting every being that walks on the ground, like the ants, like the chameleons. For the Raramuri, every animal has a meaning and a function in life.
For KRWG, I'm Samantha Sonner.
Well, I prefer to shoot in the morning and the late afternoon, and almost in the twilight hours are really golden opportunities for dramatic light, and especially in New Mexico. That is just the really perfect time to photograph. During the day, there can be many opportunities, especially in photographing in black and white, because it does offer for you to be able to work with the contrast and the tones and the stark lighting, and sometimes get some very dramatic effects. We have lived in the Mesilla Valley since 1990, and the Organ Mountains are just a part of our fabric. They just inhabit every aspect of our lives to me. Wherever you are in the valley, you see them, so they just are such a draw that it's natural to photograph them. My style of photography, being in black and white almost exclusively, is again about composition and shape and form, and the tonal contrast, the subtle tonal changes to really try to bring forth what you would like for the viewer to experience, and then also for them to experience from viewing your work. I will carry 3. Usually a wide angle and the full range, wide angle and a mid and a 70 to 200. I was very honored to be named the Artist in Residence for the Oregon Mountains Desert Peak National Monument in order to carry on that legacy. I think, or I believe that the Friends of the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks, and as well as the Bureau of Land Management, are to be commended for developing the Artist in Residence program here locally. I think it will just return many benefits over the next years. My favorite photographs would be really difficult to say. They're somewhat like your children, especially in my landscape work, because again, I really try to be mindful and contemplate why I want to take the scene to start with and what the scene is actually giving back to me. Probably my favorite place and my favorite photographs is my work and portfolio from Yellowstone National Park. And one reason that is I usually go in the winter when the interior of the park is closed, so there is very few tourists or travelers out there at that time, and you can really get a feeling for the challenges and difficulties of the wildlife, and just the stark beauty of the park is just, to me, the most fabulous place that I've ever photographed. My work is online at my website, zone8.com. By living here, you experience so much, to me, freedom, the vastness, the creative atmosphere, the melding of cultures that have all evolved into making New Mexico what it is, which I feel is very diverse, creative, open to change, open to art, open to new ideas.
That's our time for now. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's Morning Edition, 5 to 9, Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now, noon to 2, and All Things Considered, 4 to 7. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd love to hear from you. Email us with story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.